and welcome back to White Noise and our 7 Halloween specials. If these come out in the order we intended, then today we're thinking about doing a little break in the horror that we've done and talking about our comfort horrors. For anybody who's not really sure what a comfort horror is, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a horror film that you either put on when all else fails and you don't know what to watch, or you need to man it clean one day, so you put it on as background noise. It can range from horror comedy, so they're quite easy to watch, or they can get a bit more intense and weird, so when someone walks in you're like, why is that on your television? But with me and Leanna, like, we watch horror films way too young, so sometimes these films are a part of our childhood and they do bring us a disturbing amount of comfort. I don't know Leanna's and she doesn't know mine yet. I'm not sure if they're going to be similar, different. It'll be interesting to see, but I feel like Leanna should start with hers.
Well, the first thing I want to say is comfort horror is different for everyone, because some people, they consider it the horror films they grew up watching, and some people consider it fun horror. Some people would think of like cathartic horror. It kind of depends what your definition of comfort is. I'd say all of mine fall into two camps, which are those obvious ones, so like fun and cathartic. And I think my most like go-to immediate obvious ones are the Leica ones. You might not call them horror. I definitely call them horror, because horror doesn't necessarily have to be scary. We've said this a lot on this podcast, that like horror doesn't have to be gore, you know? Kiddie horror exists. So Coraline and Paranorman, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Iconic. Rewatch Paranorman the other
they
night.
make a lot of sense there. And do you know what's funny? When I was thinking of comfort horror, because I've just realized now that I fall more into the genre of if somebody came in and actually, as an example, the other day I was editing some of the White Noise graphics and I had a film on. I mean, it's October, it's Halloween, so I like to keep my life in theme. And I had on I have two franchises I always go to, one more than the other.
Yeah.
So my first comfort horror franchise is the Final Destination series.
Oh, yes.
I always put them on. And I think with me, the reason they're franchises is because I can like watch them all day, like one after the other. I think with the Final Destination series in particular, I did watch it when I was quite young, like really, really young. And I just thought, I don't know if I still think they are, but I just thought they were amazing.
Yeah.
And like, they were so good. Not the Final Destination. We don't talk about the Final Destination. I mean 1, 2, 3, and 5. They're good.
The iconic trio.
Oh yeah, obviously, especially that third one. Like, I can't really name. Actually, no, that's a lie. I was gonna say I can't really name like another franchise where the third one's probably the best one, but that's a total lie. I can. But yeah, so that's like my first franchise comfort thing, which is quite different to Coraline and Paranorman.
Don't worry, some of mine are gonna get weirder later on.
What are you? No, I want to know your weirder ones then, because that's like I've just gone in. Mine don't get any better. That's my starting off point.
Okay,
that's
so
my safe area.
I would say, and this is gonna sound so bizarre to people, Ari Aster's films. Like, to me, there is a weird comfort in Hereditary, Midsommar, and it's purely for like the catharsis of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that you necessarily feel comforted and that you feel relaxed and safe and stuff, but it's like you just feel so like, I don't know how to explain it even. Just when I think of them, I think of them as vaguely comforting, because it's like, oh, they feel like a release as you're watching them. And to me, that's comforting. And I think it is for a lot of people. I think that's why a lot of people really rallied behind Midsommar in particular, you know, especially women. The portrayal of a woman, you know, that is like, just like, it's the crime scene. You know, that's what does it for people. 100%. To me, that is just so like comforting in the weirdest way it could be.
See, I get what you're saying, but I can't feel it. Like, what you're saying makes total sense to me, but I can't. I've watched both of those films once each. Hereditary I didn't watch again because I didn't really like it. That's just on me. You know, this is why me and Leanna tend not to talk about it too much. I do still think, and I've said it many times before, I think I watched it in the wrong environment with the wrong people.
Yeah, you've said that.
So I think I do think I need to watch it again. I actually think Leanna, you and me need to watch it together on like a call or something, or whenever we get to see each other in person again, whenever that is. But with Midsommar, I can't watch it again. I can't. I find personally, I find no comfort in it. It's like like I said, I kind of get it, and I get why people could, but personally I can't. But then I am also somebody who is saying that I find comfort in absolutely tragic, accidents happening and then being haunted by death itself. Like apparently that's comforting to me,
I mean,
so I can't
don't
really
get me
talk.
wrong, we're bigging this up, but like the truly like horrifying thing would be if people said stuff like, you know, like a load of J horror. Like if someone said
Yeah.
to me like their comfort film was like the original version of The Ring or The Grudge, then I would be like concerned.
And yeah, I guarantee there are
Oh,
people
they
who
100% are out there. 100%.
yeah.
But they're not normal. I don't want to be around them.
I think it's like you said, it's debatable because comfort horror, honestly, it's not a thing. Like it's not a thing. As in, but what I mean is that I don't think any filmmaker or writer ever writes it to be comforting. So it's so strange to me that like fans have made it a thing. You know, like it's not like an actual genre in itself. It's not like, oh, have you seen that new horror film? Because like, yeah, like I really think that one day I could just like, you know, do like a full face mask and just chill and like tidy up whilst it's on in the background. Like that's not what you think when you see these films.
And do you know what's really funny to me? They're also the ones that have been really picked up by like the queer community. So say The Lost Boys, Fright Night, massive comfort horror movies to me. And they have been massively loved for like their campness, you know? So they're not particularly scary, but they are still horror films.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. I guess with those ones it's because they're obviously horror, they are, but there are, like we've spoken about this either already or we will do, you know, this is why you need to watch all 7 of our episodes this year, about like accessible horror. And I feel like accessible horrors, I feel like could always definitely fall into somebody's comfort. Like you wouldn't, unless you weren't a film fan and you just think comfort horror is strange in general, but if that's the case, then I don't know why you're listening to our podcast. Then I think anybody could kind of look at them and go, oh yeah, you know, if you walked in you'd be like, okay, this isn't that strange to have on in the background. Whereas like another one of my comfort ones is Saw.
Right. Do you know what? It's so funny you say that because I've nearly put it on my list and I was like,
I thought you were going to. That's one of the
make
ones
sense?
I thought we'd have in common.
Yeah, no, honestly, and I can't explain it because I still find that film quite creepy. And we've spoken about it in another one of these 7 Days of Horror episodes and stuff, but it's just like there's something funny about it. Like there's something like really, I think it's more Lee Whannell's character.
Yeah.
You know, when he just says all that goofy shit.
Yeah. I think with
those aspects.
I think with the first one as well, because the thing is with me is like, so there are a couple of reasons why I know that Saw, like the Final Destination, I'm not 100% sure why it's a comfort for me, apart from one reason. Saw, I do know.
Yeah.
The reason that both the franchises share is because they're franchises, it's the same thing. I can like literally put them on and I can either sit and watch them or I can do stuff, and I just have continuous music going on in the back. It's the the audio stimulation. I just need something going on. I can't be alone with my thoughts. But with Saw, there's a couple more reasons. Like I think with the first one in particular, like the others maybe not so much, but I think the first one a lot of people could see it as a comfort horror because it's that whole idea of, again, it mostly takes place in one setting, in one scene. Considering how jarring the editing, like the lighting and the story is, it is weirdly calm because, you know, again, I think I've said it or I'm gonna say it at one point, that film could have all been in one room without any cutaways or anything, and I still think it would have been really, really good. And it's weird because that's how I remember it. So when it comes to the rest of the films, it's just a case of and I also think because they're not hard to watch, that's not right, hard to follow. Like they obviously, I know they have like massive twists and stuff like that, but once you've seen them, you know them.
You just
so
don't
you
really
don't
remember the later ones.
No, and you don't really, but once you've seen them once, you don't need to pay attention to the storyline. And with me, it's a similar thing with Final Destination, which is why I can just put it on, and I can also put on anyone.
Yeah.
And I can just enjoy it. But another thing with Saw that Final Destination doesn't have is, Leanna, you're the one that lent me all of the Saw DVDs and I watched them all in like a weekend. And I think that's another reason they comfort me.
Because in your head, I guess, as well, you think of a weekend chilling watching those films.
Exactly. And it's like part of the reason that we ended up becoming close. So technically it like led to this podcast and things like that and our friendship. So it's fucked up, but Saw is tied into my life in a strange way. And also, I don't know if I've told the story on the podcast before, but it always makes me laugh and it makes me worry about my memory. But I remember when my family went on like a trip to America, and I don't know why, because I was like 13, but me and my dad went for a walk and we somehow got into the discussion of the Saw films. And I remember he told me, and I hadn't seen them at that point yet,
Mm.
and he told me the plot of every single one.
Yeah.
And then when I actually came around to watching them, I had totally forgotten, so I still got to enjoy them. But
You're
it's
so
just,
blessed. You're one of those people that can like not remember a plot. I'm so jealous.
yeah, but Leanna, then I also don't remember where like I've left my phone at the same time. So it's like a blessing and a curse.
I mean, it's funny we're talking about franchises because the other big thing that I have made note of, in particular, is the first film, but the franchise as well, for many of the reasons you're saying, Scream. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about Scream maybe as much as The Handmaiden now on this
Yeah,
podcast.
I was yeah, at one point it was Rocky Horror and the Lost Boys. Now we're in our
Our
Scream and the
Scream era.
Handmaiden era.
Yeah. But like it's the same as what you're kind of saying about like Final Destination. Like I will just stick on any of the Scream films. Like I don't need to watch them in order, or I could just sit on a Sunday and watch all the Scream films. Like I can
Mhm.
do it either way and I'm gonna have a bloody fantastic time. And they definitely are comforting because they have that like that lovely 90s feel to them.
Yeah.
You know, that's like you watch films specifically from the 90s and they kind of have that like warm filmy look to them. Like
Mhm.
you're watching a horror film, but it also looks a
Yeah,
bit
I totally
nostalgic
agree. Yeah.
because
They're not like comfort films for me, but I can see why.
yeah, of course. And it's like one thing I did think about recently, and this actually blows my mind. I think a lot of films from an older era would be more like comfort horror simply due to the fact that they look more like what we watched growing up. Does that make any
That's
sense?
that's
So, like,
such a good
if you look
point.
at the photography, like photo albums from when we were kids, they look a bit,
Mhm.
they're film photos, they're grainier. So, like, those older
Mhm.
films, if they're horror, they're automatically going to be a bit more like endearing to us.
Mhm.
But
That's
I don't
so
know if
true.
that's maybe too like maybe I'm deep in it
No,
too much, but
I actually agree, because see, this is why it would be interesting to have like people of a younger generation maybe answer the same
mm,
question about
yeah,
like, what would their comfort horror be? Do they even think comfort horrors are a thing? Are we actually trying to rationalize a
yeah,
really
yeah,
fucked up thing,
yeah.
But no, I think that makes total sense. And I would, if anybody out there is a psychologist or something, or has insight into this and there is an answer, please let us know, because I'm curious to know. Like, I can give reasons as to why these films are comfort films, why they're horror, because obviously I have comfort films that aren't horror as well, but everybody has comfort films. That's
Yeah,
not
of
new.
course, yeah.
And I know a lot of people have comfort horror films, but it's still not the norm.
It's funny because it's like one of those things where when you live in a certain area of the internet, it feels normal. But then you
Hmm.
like you chat to someone and you say it like, "Oh, I just find that Scream a really comforting chill day film." People
Hmm.
are, what?
It's
They
like
don't
that
get it.
meme that just went around for ages that was like, girls say, "Oh, we're gonna watch my comfort film, whatever," and then their comfort film is like the Saw franchise or some really fucked up film, whatever. And like, it's a joke, but it's not
Yeah.
a joke.
But I think it's also a big part of it is if you're someone that enjoys like a bit of catharsis, like I was saying about like
Hmm.
Hereditary and Midsommar. Like if you're
Hmm.
someone who, when you're comforted, you genuinely just want to be like coddled and lightness, like you're not going to lean towards horror as a comfort film, are you? You're just not.
True, yeah.
You know?
This is why I wonder if like we're rationalizing a strange thing, because it's like, is it?
I think
Like,
it's perfectly healthy. That's my
well,
opinion.
it's not done me any harm as far as I'm aware.
Mm. I just want to say, like, if we're going to talk about, say, like, comedic comfort horror, which is
Hmm.
something I feel like most people would gravitate towards. I mean, I've already said Scream. Another major one on my list is Jennifer's Body. Oh, yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, not one I've watched a lot. Like, not
Mm.
for, I don't know why I haven't watched it a lot. But yeah, again, that makes sense.
Because it's got that, like, it sounds so stupid. It's got that, like, teen film vibe
Yeah.
to it. Because it's got all the
Hmm.
comedy, teenage characters, teenage girls being bitchy. But then at the end of the day, she is killing and eating guys. So it's like,
But
what's
it's
going
done in
on here?
like, yeah. But again, you're right. It's the way that it's done. And I guess with Jennifer's Body as well, it's because it is our era. Like,
Yeah.
it was a tiny bit before our
Only
era,
ever so
I would
slightly,
say,
only by
but
like
only
a
a
year
few
or
years
two. But
out.
when you're a
Yeah.
teenager, that year or two makes such a big difference,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
I think it's because we're part of that weird generation that like nobody can
Yeah.
decide what we are, which is fine with me. I generally don't care.
Yeah.
But like, some people say that we're millennials, some people say that we're
I
Gen.
think we're like the first year of Gen Z.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think so too. But then it's also weird because you were born in 97 and I was born in 96, which are only a year apart, but apparently that's the difference. So technically, some people think we're two different generations.
I personally think it falls more on the school year.
I think so too. And I also think it falls down to experience as well. For
Yeah.
example, Jennifer's Body, like I put that as like my generation.
Yeah.
Because I did grow up, it was things people talked about. I watched it when I was young, but then I didn't watch it until years after it had come out.
I was going to say about that, actually. What's really funny is a lot of people younger than us have claimed it as theirs. So they would think of it as like their film for their age group. And then people older than us didn't really get it. And a lot of people our age. So it's almost like, does it actually belong more to like Gen Z than it does to millennials in a way? Because it was so ahead of its time, wasn't it?
What if you get to an age and you just stop liking it? What if that's what happens?
No,
it was like the curse of Jennifer's Body.
That's
like you reach like, I don't know, mid-30s or something, and you just wake up one day
Don't say that.
and you're like, that film.
Don't you dare. That'll never happen to me. Don't you say it.
Come back to us in like 10 years and like Leanna's like, right, we need to do an episode on how Jennifer's Body was just like so overrated.
Never. Honestly, it is so fascinating to me though how like Gen Z are way more into the idea of like finding comfort in weird stuff. You know, so I feel like if we like asked a lot of millennials what their comfort horror is, they'd be like, and then maybe they'd say something like The Lost Boys, you know, but Gen Z are going to say like way more like out of pocket stuff.
I also think millennials would lie.
Yes.
Because this is, and we've spoken about this briefly before, and I think it was actually on our episode on Jennifer's Body about how the younger generation now doesn't care as much about like what they like.
Yeah.
You know, because
if anything, they define themselves by it, like potentially too much, you know?
That's a debate for another day.
Exactly.
But regardless, like I feel like you're right. If you asked like, someone from Gen Z generation, or just like, what, 5 years or so younger than us, they would, if they still didn't think we were strange, they would answer it quite honestly. And I think it would probably be a bit more out there. But then there's also, so whilst I think millennials who didn't answer honestly might lie either and be like, oh, I don't have one, or not be honest about it, I think Gen Z in some regard also might go too far and lie the other way and be
like to prove a point, like a person,
you know what I mean?
I completely agree. Like they'll be like, oh, sallow.
Exactly. And it's like, no, like nobody's comfort film is sallow. Like if you say it is, I'm sorry, it's not. It's just not.
It's like at one point you're just lying, you know?
Yeah.
It's just so stupid.
It's like, I said we were going to get into this debate again, but just quickly to bring up, it's like at the moment everybody talking about how like a certain true crime dramatization of whatever, it wasn't enough for them. And it's like, okay, but anyway, we're not here to talk about that.
Okay, if we're going to talk about another thing, as soon as I say it, if it's not on your list, you're going to immediately be like, I don't know how I didn't include this. Treehouse of Horror.
I didn't think, I was just thinking films. That's so fucking true. I'm so appreciative of Disney putting them all together every Halloween so you can just watch them.
They're so nostalgic. I watch Treehouse of Horror and I feel like a kid again, but then in such a good way, because it's like I am still also an adult and enjoying them as an adult. Does that make any sense? Probably not.
No, definitely. No, I think it's because like you get the same enjoyment. It's the same enjoyment.
Yes, but then you get more because you've probably seen the films it's referencing now. So you get to enjoy it in a new lens. So like the other day I was watching one of the really early ones where it's the Raven.
Oh, a classic. It's so good.
So much better. But what I love about Treehouse of Horror, right, and why it's so comforting to me, is because you can watch it without having to know the references when it does do references. Like there are people that are obsessed with like, you know, like what is it? All work and no play makes Homer go. What is it? No beer, no TV makes Homer go something. There's so many people that find that hilarious and they've never seen The Shining.
Yeah, and you don't have to, but then like you said, if you do, you get another layer.
Exactly, and it's like that's why I find Treehouse of Horror so comforting, because while it is like a parody, it is still like they are still Simpsons episodes. Yeah, do you know what I mean? And I just like, I love it so much. It's great.
I actually, I think that's a really good one to kind of end on as well, because that's like, how did I not think about this?
I know every Halloween I sit and I like binge them. I drink, I make pumpkins, try not to get too drunk before I do pumpkins. You know, I sit there and I just watch them throughout the day. It's so fun, honestly. There's nothing better because you get the joy of horror films while having fun. And to me, that's like the best kind of comfort horror, because while I've spoken about catharsis and we've said like maybe like some younger people might say stuff that's really out left field, when you and me talk about comfort horror, I think we're thinking more about having fun,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the Final Destination Saw
Yeah,
again,
but
but yeah.
you say this, but Final Destination is still very funny.
Yeah, no, you are right. And to be fair, so Saw, at least the first one.
The first one has, do you know, that is something I will say before we end, but like, I get so gutted when I go back and rewatch the Saw films. I forget that the first one is kind of funny. And
Yeah.
then the second one loses all of it. It's immediately, it's like gritty, dark, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm like, where are the light-hearted jokes? Like, that's one of the really good things about the first Saw, is that like those bits make the rest feel so much more intense.
Yeah, it is. It's like up and then you just dropped. It's like you just
Exactly.
reminded of where you are, which
Exactly.
maybe that's again why it's like a kind of like a comfort for me, because if I put it on when I'm doing something else, I kind of only pay attention to the fun bits, and then I don't necessarily, I'm not really paying attention when the rest
But
is
then
going
you can
on.
zone in for the end and just enjoy that
Exactly.
amazing ending, you know?
Exactly. And then I've forgotten what I was even doing. Like I've got like the Hoover in one hand and like
No.
antibacterial spray in the other. I'm just like,
Just watching like Jigsaw like
yeah. I've done nothing that day. So this was just like, a quick little slower episode. A quick slow, that made sense, but people know what I mean. This was a quick slow episode. Kind of in between all the others that we're doing this year. Yeah, I just think comfort horror is something that I think a lot of people talk about without talking about it. So we just wanted to
Yeah,
talk
like
about
we
it.
all know we have them, but like I don't really see many, say, like podcast episodes, YouTube videos about it. Like maybe you see like the odd list someone does on Letterboxd, but like it would be really fun to hear more people's comfort horror choices, because I'm sure there's millions we haven't thought about today, you know?
Yeah. And even like if you know the reason behind it, it would be interesting because yeah, like sometimes it's because you grow up with them, sometimes it's just because of what you get out of them. Sometimes I don't know, just because it's background noise. It's
Exactly.
that
Like
simple.
everyone has
Yeah.
a different reason for that particular film or show or anything. I had a million things I could have listed today, like books and graphic novels, but we could have been here for ages. And
Yeah.
honestly, I've enjoyed a slower episode. Sometimes it's fun to just name drop things and say things
Yeah.
we enjoy.
Hmm.
If you have enjoyed this episode and you can think of any recommendations, please comment them or let us on the YouTube video. I mean, if you are listening somewhere else, maybe let us know on socials, tell us on Twitter, tell us on Instagram, TikTok, we're everywhere, because I don't know, like maybe I've not heard of that thing, or maybe I've never thought to watch it with,
Hmm.
that lens. So let us know.
Yeah, and we'll also have a recommendation list, our list, a little mixture of what our comfort horrors are on Twitter and Instagram once this episode goes out. So you can check them out as well. And we'll see you soon for the rest of these 7 days of horrors. So
Yeah, so like and subscribe to this one, and that's it today. So
yeah,
bye.
bye.